Hello, you're about to watch the lecture on the quality film analysis theory for Journalism 180, Introduction to Film at McHenry County College. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the first lecture in the Introduction to Film series at McHenry County College, and the topic today will be the quality film analysis theory. It is a culmination of studying. I've been studying films for a long time, both as an instructor and both as a student, and of course as a casual observation as just a fan of films. And so over the time I have developed these ideas and these concepts, and I've put it together into the quality film analysis theory, which is what I'm going to share with you today. So speaking of share, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to give you my PowerPoint. You will have access to this PowerPoint as well, and that'll put me up in the upper corner of the screen. And then what I will do is I'll start this off, and I'll probably move me a little bit just to kind of make sure that I'm going to put myself in the corner here so that you can see the rest of the material as it comes through it. You will have access to the PowerPoint. You always have access to every PowerPoint for every single lecture that you'll get a chance to see. And then you can pause them, you can record them, they'll be posted out there, and you can use them at any time. So feel free to watch them as many times. Maybe bring in the family, say, hey, let's watch Stockholm and this film analysis theory, whatever you want to do is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so the quality film analysis theory, what is it? Where does it go? Well, it is basically the way that we look at the fictional film. And we're going to focus a lot on the American fictional film. We may bring in a flavor of some of the foreign films as well. But for the most part, we focus in on the American fictional film. And that's not to say that there's not other elements of the film industry, of course, that we will talk about. But for the most part, as an introduction class, we're going to focus on the American fictional film. And when you watch films, whether you watch them on your phone, whether you go to the theater, whether you watch them in your family room, whatever it happens to be, you usually have a kind of a reaction to it. There's an emotional connection. That's what happens with art. But before we get into the actual quality film analysis theory, I want to look at something that's going to happen to you as you watch a film. Basically, watching any film, and it doesn't matter if it is a fictional film, if it's a documentary film, animation, hybrid, it doesn't matter. When watching any type of film, you're really going to ask yourself three basic questions. And they're not the only questions, but these questions will give you the best vision of the film and your feelings about it. Okay, so when we start with the first one is, does the film do what it intends to do? In other words, does it have that emotional connection to you that makes you react emotionally? Do you laugh at it? Do you cry? Do you are you motivated in some way? Are you become passionate about a particular subject or cause? What does that film do to you? So if the film is created to be a comedy and it makes you laugh, well, then it did what it intended to do. If it is a film that motivates you, like if you got done with Miracle and you had this incredible sense of patriotism and everything like that, yes, that's what it did. It did what it intends to do. There's nothing more frustrating than going to see a film and expecting one thing and getting something else. Yes, you can be pleasantly surprised by a film if it's something that is really, you weren't sure what you were getting yourself and you were pleasantly surprised. But if I go to watch a comedy movie and it's not funny, then I don't think it did what it intended to do. Now, that's not to say that people don't have different tastes. Of course they do. But remember, the film is set for a specific purpose. There's a reason behind it. Any art form is done that way. There's a reason or a purpose behind making it. And so when we watch a film, there's an intention. The director made the film on purpose for a specific reason. And so did it do what it intends to do? The second thing is what we think about is, will we want to see it again? Many films, you can tell 20, 30, half hour into the film, something like that, you know, if you want to watch it again, you're pretty convinced. You have a couple of reasons for this. One is that you really are enjoying the film and you want to see it a second time. Another one is if it's got a lot of information in it, you're like, I might need to see this a second time just to capture and get all the stuff out of it. A film like Endgame, if you were a Marvel Universe fan, when you saw Endgame, you probably enjoyed it. I would assume you enjoyed it. And if you didn't enjoy it, there was a reason for it that you didn't enjoy it. and you knew pretty much through the film that you're like, you know what, either I got to go back and watch all the 21 films that preceded it, or I'm going to have to watch this again and make sure I capture everything that was intended as I was watching that particular film. So when we watch movies, we determine if we want to see it again. Now, that does come with a slight caveat, because there are certain films that are so heavy in their topic that it makes it very difficult for you to watch it multiple times. A movie like Shawshank Redemption, which may very well be one of the best films of the last 50 years. It's a fantastic movie, but the amount of elements that Andy Dufresne, Tim Robbins' character, has to go throughout the film to get to the redemption factor is absolutely just it's draining. It is emotionally draining. So it may not be the film that you put in on a Friday night when you buy a pizza with your friends, but it is an excellent film that everybody should see at least once. So that's why when I say, do you want to see it again? It comes with a slight caveat depending on the heaviness of the subject matter. Other films, yeah, that's your go-to film, right? We all have a favorite film, and that's the film that we go to, and it's because of several factors, which we'll get into in a few moments here. The third and final point to consider when we're watching a film is, can it be used as a benchmark to compare other films to? We do this a lot. Actually, we probably do it subconsciously. When we watch a movie, we automatically compare it to other films of that genre or other films from that actor or director. We do that. And sometimes it's unfair. When we're looking at generations, it's very, very difficult to do that. Other times, it's very logical. We say that. When you got done with Endgame, we'll go back to Endgame for a second. We got done with Endgame, you compared it to the other 21 films in the Marvel Universe. You did right away. You said, was it the best one? Was it the one that landed when we looked at it? Did it fully reach the end that we were looking for? So we compare films like that. There's other films like the Star Wars universe. As we look at the Star Wars films, every film's compared back to A New Hope, which is a film that I often have everybody watch. We all build it back to that. Does that mean that that original film is the best and there will never be a better one? No, that doesn't mean that at all. What it means is, as we watch the film, is it a measuring stick? Is it something that we're going to look at and see if a film can exceed that? Is it a film that is as good or better? Another film that I've often recommended for years was Die Hard, right? Die Hard was the king of the action film. And when we look at Die Hard, it was from 1988. The films that preceded it were a little different. The films that followed it pretty much followed the same formula that Die Hard did. And so that's why we talk about it being a benchmark film. It's a film. Does it mean it's the best? No. What it means is it's the measuring stick, and films have to shoot for it. And so when we watch the film, we do this automatically. We say, okay, I just spent my whatever amount of money to go watch the movie. I want to get my money's worth. And then I start to compare it to the other films at that point. Okay. So those are the 3 points that we consider when we're watching a film. Okay. Did it do what it intended to do? Will I want to see it again? And is it a benchmark? And yes, there's other questions to ask, but if we ask those 3 questions, we can determine the value of that particular film. Now, speaking of value, what we look at in the quality film analysis theory is we look at several elements that are present in the fictional film that make it a good film, or a possibly great film, or an outstanding film. There is 5 basic elements, and over the years of studying films and writing about films and watching them and even getting the opportunity to direct them, we look at 5 major qualities, and that's where we're going to go now. Okay, so here they are. Here are the 5 main qualities of a film to analyze. When you watch a movie, you're going to look at these 5 pieces. Okay, and the first one is the most important, and the first one is story. As I have said many a time, and I will continue to say it, if you don't have a story, you don't have a film. End of discussion. That's how it works, okay? We have to watch a film, but we are engaged in the story, and the story makes or breaks the movie. Why did we go see Endgame? Because we were finishing the story. Why do we go see these films? We're engaged in the story. Yes, we want to see the actors and we want to see some of the visual effects, and maybe we like a particular director. But when it all boils down to it, it is the story that drives the fictional film. And without it, you just have a bunch of pictures, okay? And so the story is the most important. As many directors will say, story is king. And it is king. Without it, you have a bunch of pictures. You don't have anything. The story is what draws us through the film. We're engaged. Going back to Endgame, which I've talked about a couple of times so far, Endgame, we needed to see how it was going to get to that endpoint. How were we going to get there? That's why we went to see that movie. Yeah, we wanted to see Chris Evans and we wanted to see Robert Downey Jr. and we were pretty much locked into it because we watched the other films. But we wanted to see how it ended. How were they going to bring it to an end? We were engaged in the story. And so a strong story can carry the film. A weak story, doesn't matter what else you got in it, doesn't matter. The film's going to flop. So the story is king. Now, with that said, okay, without the story, you don't have a film. There still has to be something else with it. See, a story is just a story. And we're natural storytellers. We love telling stories, right? That's the first thing you usually say to somebody that you haven't seen in a while. Wait till I tell you this, right? So we like to do that. But a story is a story. But in order to make it a film, we have to do the second quality, which is cinematography. See, cinematography, and we're going to spend an entire lecture on just cinematography and the cinematographic arts. Cinematography in its basic unit is how a film is shot. That's what it is. That is the basic unit of cinematography, how the film is shot. And so we have to bring the story to a visual representation. Because if it's a story, it's just a story, right? But a story shot well now becomes a film. So that's why cinematography is so important. Now, great cinematography will not save a bad story. It's not going to work that way. A good story can overcome a adequate cinematography. So both of these things work together as we look through there. Okay, so that's your second quality of the quality film analysis theory. Number three, though, makes a lot of sense as well. Number three is the acting, right? The acting. And maybe the greatest actor in the history of American cinema is right there on the screen for you, the great Katharine Hepburn. She is the only individual ever to win 4 Academy Awards for Best leading role. Just an amazing, amazing actress, an amazing woman. And we saw her develop over time. Now, what she said, and we'll talk about this when we get into acting later on, she said if you give audiences half the chance, they'll do half the acting for you. But acting itself is a true art form. And you can be taught to be an actor. And if you like acting, I would highly recommend taking Jay Geller's acting class. But acting, when it all boils down to, is to make us believe that you are that character. And in the world of film, your entire purpose is to breathe life into the character so that we can see that. That's how that works, all right? So a strong story with good cinematography and good acting, well, now you got something cooking. Now, a great actor will not save a bad story, but a good story can overcome adequate acting. And of course, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when we really think about it. Great actors usually don't take bad stories. That's just how it is, right? They can be very selective. Katharine Hepburn can look at multiple scripts and decide which has the best story and the most interesting character and take that. And so as you watch the films in not only in this class, but in the future, you can see that the great actors take the great stories because they have that opportunity. Whereas an up and coming actor may not necessarily have that option. Doesn't mean that they're not good. It just means that great actors will not save a bad story, but a great story can help an up and coming actor. All right, so that's how those work together. One of my favorite performances in the acting world, again, Katharine Hepburn is one of my favorites, but one of my other favorites is, of course, the great Johnny Depp. And Johnny Depp has the ability to morph into those characters that maybe nobody else would play, right? Edward Scissorhands or Elwood or Ichabod Crane, or let's not forget maybe his iconic performance, which was Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean films. It is a cinematic crime that he did not win the Best Actor Academy Award for that role. He was absolutely fantastic. And there is nothing quite like that. We've never seen a character quite like that. And part of that character is the ability for us to believe that that's how we would see a pirate. That's when you think of a pirate, that's probably the first thing that comes to your head. But there was also something else that he added to that character that made it important. And that's actually the fourth quality of the quality film analysis theory. And that's what we call the visual aspects. Now, cinematography is how the film is shot, but the visual aspects are everything else that we're going to shoot during the scene, the visual aspects. And something like Johnny Depp's Captain Jack Sparrow is a perfect example of that. See, Johnny Depp, who is a phenomenal actor, but it's the costume, it's the makeup that he wears, it's the hairstyles, it's all of the stuff. It's also his mannerisms, right? It looked like he was a drunk sailor as he moved around. That was all visuals, and that is very, very important because we need to sell it. If Jack Sparrow started to talk like some sort of guy on a beach, right? You know, like, hey, let's hang 10. It wouldn't stay the same. That's, you know, that we need to have all of that stuff involved there. The visual look of that particular character, we expect him to look that way. And so there's people on staff that do the makeup. There's people on staff that do the various different costuming. All that stuff has to be there. Sets, props, all of that there. Now that, of course, is secondary to the story. If the story is not good, it doesn't matter how great the actor is and how great the props are. But they can also accent to a great story. The fifth and final piece of the quality film analysis theory is what I refer to as the audio. And we'll stay with Jack Sparrow for a second. And like I said, if Jack Sparrow sounded like somebody that was on a beach, it wouldn't quite work, right? It's the language that he uses. It's the way that he talks, right? He says words that nobody uses today, right? He says savvy. Who says savvy? Nobody says savvy. If you say savvy in a conversation, people will think you're Jack Sparrow, right? He says a word like, do we have an Accord? And I say, no, we drive an Odyssey, right? You know, he uses words that are synonymous with what we think of that character. And every character is written to tell the story. And their audio aspects, the language that they use is just as important. We expect a character in a very precarious situation to use certain terms that are only reserved for when you step on a Lego without shoes on in the middle of the night, or women in labor, right? That's what we expect. And so as the audio aspects are involved in the film, those have to be consistent with the character, the acting, and of course the story. The other part of the audio aspects is, and we're going to talk about sound in great detail, but you have three basic elements to sound. You have dialogue, which, as we point out, with Jack Sparrow had to have the appropriate dialogue for a pirate. You also have what is called sound effects, and sound effects have to match up. Certain sound effects match up with what we see as characters walk, that as they step, there is certain things that we see with that. And then the third and last piece of the audio is the music, right? Music accents what we do when we watch a film. So all of these pieces work together in the audio side of things. We experience a film visually, but we also experience the film auditorily. And so all of those have to work there. So those are your 5 elements of the quality film analysis theory. So let's go over it one last time as we wrap it up. We'll go in through there. When we watch any type of film, you have 3 things, right? Does it do what it intends to do? Do I want to see it again? And is it benchmark? Not the only questions, but very good questions to give you the straight approach to the film. And then, of course, the 5 main qualities. Story. Story is king. We need story. Without a story, you don't have a film. But a story is just a story, so we have to visualize it. That's where the cinematography comes in. Of course, we have to have the actors breathe life into the characters through the story and tell the story for us. And of course, they need visual aspects and they need audio aspects. So those are your 5 qualities of a quality film analysis theory. Okay. All right, so hope you enjoyed that. And that is the first of the lectures that we have there. And again, you have access to these PowerPoint that I just showed you. That is right underneath there in the module. You can rewind this. You can play this multiple times, whatever you need to do. And that way you have a understanding of what's going on there. So last but not least, I always got to leave you with a little bit of a smile. And so when I think back toward certain things, if you ever see a horse running wild, be very, very careful when you approach them because they're unstable. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again on the pewter.